Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Cyrus Davis, and today I just want to bring you a quick EUIC tier list before the event happens this weekend. I made a Prismatic Evolutions tier list before the first major event outside of Japan in this format, but we have had a couple events since then, so I want to do a quick update before EUIC. This will probably be a little bit late for any players who are still deciding what to play for EUIC, but it should be right on time for anyone watching from home and just wanting to sort of get an idea of what to expect this weekend. So let's just go in order here. Dragapult, definitely top tier. I don't think there has a lot of bad matchups. I made a guide on Dragapult if you want to see like what I would sort of bring into the event if I were playing Dragapult and attending. And I'll sort of comment on that when I have guides on quite a few of these decks. I'm actually going to put an A tier. I don't think it's like a phenomenal pick. Like, it doesn't like, I think it gives you a pretty decent chance into the metagame. I think that it's pretty likely to have one of the best shots opening the event, because it'll also probably be the most popular deck. But generally speaking, I think the deck is just very well rounded. It doesn't have a lot of super bad matchups, even if it's like unfavored matchups are very, very winnable for it. So I think it's just sort of the naturally strongest deck in the format as far as general power level goes. Miraidon, I'm also going to put an A tier. I think that people really aren't respecting it enough. I think that it still has good matchups into the top of the metagame, and people aren't really changing away from those decks very much. So if people still aren't going to be respecting Miraidon like they haven't the past couple events, I mean, it just won 2 major events back-to-back. I really don't see any signs that or reason why it would slow down. I think there's definitely some Archaludon and Lost Box hype going into this event, which could be scary for Miraidon, but generally speaking, I think the deck is still very well positioned. Ancient Box I'll put in B tier. I think it has like good matchups into what I expect to be the most popular decks, which are like Dragapult, Miraidon, Gardevoir. I think that the Dragapult and Gardevoir matchups, I think Gardevoir is slightly unfavored actually. Dragapult I think is pretty close with the Munkidori in the Ancient Box list. This is another deck that I have a guide on from this week. I think that Ancient Box is, a fine deck for the event, but it's definitely still lacks in consistency a little bit, and its matchups are not very clean. So I probably wouldn't play it personally, but I do think that like the meta is pretty decently positioned for it. Archaludon, also going to put that up in here in A tier above Dragapult and Miraidon. This would be one of my top picks for the event if I were going. Which I will touch on which decks here I would actually personally consider playing. Archaludon is going to be one of those 4 decks. I think that the deck is really strong. I actually wrote an article on Schmancy's Corner about this deck very recently, and how it is well positioned into the EUIC metagame. Miraidon just won back-to-back events, and Archaludon plays on that really well. Dragapult will probably be the most popular deck in the format, which Archaludon also has a great matchup against. And the deck honestly just doesn't have a lot of very unfavorable matchups. Some of its worst matchups are like Charizard and Gholdengo, which are not incredibly popular decks. So I think the deck is just super, super strong right now. Probably the best meta it's had so far going into UIC here. I can put Snorlax in S tier. I think this would be one of my top picks as well in the top 4 there. I think that Snorlax, has a good Miraidon matchup, has a good Dragapult matchup, has a good Gardevoir matchup. I know that those might be tumultuous opinions, but I have a guide on the deck. And I think all those matchups are very, very favored. I've beat many, many very strong Dragapult and Gardevoir players with Snorlax very consistently. I have something like a 70% win rate into both of them. I think that Snorlax is super, super well positioned. You just have to play it right and play the right lists. I think that people who think that Snorlax doesn't beat these decks is probably just not playing the right list, or maybe playing the deck a little bit wrong. I don't think that Snorlax is the most complex deck in the world to play, but I think that your list makes a big difference, and sometimes it's just like minute card changes, or like very careful late game planning in your close matchups that make or break the difference. But yeah, I think Snorlax is an incredibly strong play. My list also beats Lugia, which is another big plus. You basically beat the top 4 decks, right? Dragapult, Gardevoir, Miraidon, Lugia. So I would highly recommend playing Snorlax. The exact list that I think it's at least like 59 cards the same. I don't know if I've changed anything since the guide, but it should be like almost identical to the same list that I have for the deck right now. So next we have Ceruledge. I'm going to put it in Ceruledge. Maybe in B tier. I think that it has decent matchups into a a lot of the popular decks, but I don't think that it's a great deck in general. I think that it sort of struggles to do what it wants to do every game. I don't think that the Dragapult matchup's great. I think the Gardevoir matchup's pretty bad as well. But like they're very winnable, you know, like it has lines into both matchups, especially if they're not playing Manaphy, you know, you should, if and you go ahead and get like the easy Moonlight Shuriken on double Kirlia or double Dracloak. So I think there's a lot of potential for Ceruledge, but it definitely lacks some strength into those top matchups, some consistency that for me puts it below like the tier of decks that I think are like actually like good plays for the event. Charizard we'll put in C tier. I think it's like better positioned than it has been because it has a good Miraidon matchup, good Archaludon matchup, which are both expected to be pretty popular decks, and then it is good into Lost Box, which is also another deck that is being pretty hyped for the event. So I think Gardevoir is obviously like pretty close. I think you can build the deck probably to be favored into Gardevoir, especially because Gardevoir lists aren't really preparing for Charizard. Dragapult I think is cursed to be an unfavorable matchup for the deck, even if you tech for it. Just because they do such a similar thing to you, but the way they do it is better than the way that you do it in the matchup. Pult plus Dusknoir is the stronger combo into a mirror than Zard plus Dusknoir. So yeah, I think Dragapult is still going to be an unfavorable matchup either way, but yeah, I think that Charizard is definitely a better call than it has been for the last couple events, but still just not a good one in general. Gardevoir I will also put up here in A tier, I think above Archaludon. I have a video on this deck as well, on the Secret Box build of the deck, and then I have an article on the Shuffle Squad Metafy on 5 different builds, all with different A specs. So if you want to play Gardevoir and you want to see my take on a list without Secret Box, I have lists and explanations for all of those as well. Gardevoir has a good Archaludon matchup and Lost Box matchup, which are both relatively hyped for the event. Obviously, the Lost Box matchup kind of depends on what techs you play in Gardevoir. But I think that the matchup's like relatively okay either way, as long as you play either like Badoo, Klefki, Fluttermane. Dragapult matchup I think is close, but probably slightly favored for Gardevoir. I think if you're like a more skilled player in the matchup, that you should probably win it more like pretty consistently. Definitely a very skill-based matchup. I think the Mawile tech definitely shores up Miraidon to be at least even. I think that matchup is fine as well. Snorlax with at least the list that I would recommend from my video is a very favorable matchup for Guardy as well. Really, I mean, Gardevoir isn't scared of any deck that's been put on the list so far. I don't think it's really scared of any deck that we're going to put on this list either. So, I mean, that's what makes it so strong, right? I don't think it has hard losses to anything. So Gardevoir, I mean, even I'll put it in this tier. Gardevoir is still like probably the actual best deck in the format. Gholdengo, I'll put in B tier, high B tier. It's good against Archaludon, good against Miraidon, not bad in a Guardy or Dragapult. So, I mean, that's enough for me. I think the Lugia matchup's also fine. Badoo definitely is a little bit weak too, but generally speaking, I think that the deck is definitely underrated currently in this format and has the potential to, sort of reclaim a spot in the metagame here at this tournament. I think the deck is generally inconsistent, and that is why I would still not recommend playing it, keeping it down here in B tier below the decks that I would actually recommend. But I think that it is a pretty decent call if you really like Gholdengo. If you're already considering it, or if it's just something you're really comfortable with, Gholdengo could be a good play. Iron Thorns I'm going to put down here in C tier. Terrible Dragapult matchup. Gardevoir matchup, also not very good, depending on what techs they play. Your Miraidon matchup's like fine, but if they play Zapdos, not great either. Ceruledge is not great. I just think you have a lot of pretty bad matchups. I don't think it's really worth playing Iron Thorns. I mean, you don't even get to you can't really even outskill your opponents with Iron Thorns, right? You just kind of play the cards that you draw. So Lost Box, I will put at top of B tier. I think it has a bad Dragapult matchup still. I've seen a lot of lists. I know a lot of top players are considering this, but I still think the Dragapult matchup is bad. I think you beat Archaludon and Miraidon for sure. I think Guardy can tech to beat you if they play Badoo or Fluttermane or Klefki. I don't think the matchup is that good anymore. So I don't think that this is the time that we should all be whipping out Lost Box, but I see the vision. I think that, beating Archaludon and Miraidon really heavily is really nice. I mean, Dragapult and Gardevoir aren't playing Manaphy, and if you do hit people playing just the top A Gardevoir list that doesn't play Klefki, Mawile, or Badoo, or Fluttermane, sorry, not Mawile, Klefki, Fluttermane, or Badoo. I mean, Lost Box probably is like really good into that list, right? I mean, the Hero's Cape is relevant because you have Vacuum, they don't play on Fair Stamp. So I think the Lost Box is pretty well prepared to deal with a lot of Gardevoir lists that are out there right now. But I think that like if you play like a better Gardevoir list than the ones that sort of just net decking the top 8 list, I think that you should be able to beat Lost Box pretty consistently with Gardevoir still. So we'll see. I think that Lost Box definitely has the potential because I know that some good players are playing it to like win the event. But I think that, like, generally speaking, I'm still not really sold on it. Lugia V-Star. Lugia V-Star. Probably also in B tier. I put it above Lost Box. I think that you obviously beat Dragapult really hard, but Archaludon, Miraidon, and Gardevoir are all tough matchups. So I think that makes it like not super playable, but I think that like generally all 3 of those matchups are all still very winnable for the deck. The Lugia can kind of beat anything right now. I think the deck's really good in general. I do have a guide on Lugia as well on my channel. I would still be playing the no Chinchino build. Personally, I think you could make more of an argument to add a 1-1 Chinchino since we've been seeing some Archaludon hype going into this event with quite a few top players talking about bringing it. So Lugia, yeah, definitely solid, but I would not recommend it probably. Walls, I'm going to put in B tier as well. The deck has good matchups into most of the popular decks, if not with the Mimikyu, like not even the Cornerstone right now, actually. I'm playing, my current list only plays Iron Thorns and Melodic EX. But Iron Thorns and Melodic EX is enough to be favorable to Miraidon, Dragapult, Archa, and Lugia, so these top 4 up here. You're definitely unfavorable in the Gardevoir. You beat Ancient, you beat Ceruledge, Gholdengo's fine, Charizard's fine. So yeah, I think the deck is, or Iron Thorns you beat as well. So yeah, I think the deck is really strong. But I think that it's a little bit inconsistent still, and I don't like how diverse the meta is right now for it. I think that I'm too scared to hit like just random stuff or too many Gardevoirs to play it right now. But I think that it's still a good deck. I think that like if you're playing Walls, just because you want like sort of an easy deck to play for the event, I think that Walls is still definitely good. But yeah, right now I'm liking the Thorns, Melodic, and Noivern. I do still play the Noivern build in it. Just no Cornerstone, no Mimikyu. So this picture doesn't quite accurately reflect my Walls list. PalkPagos, I'm going to put it like B tier. I feel like it can't be that bad. I think it has like a pretty good Gardevoir matchup. Close Miraidon matchup. It's probably pretty bad in Miraidon, actually. Dragapult's probably pretty bad as well. I haven't really played much Palkpagos in this format. It's definitely fallen off. I'll put it top of C tier just because like these matchups actually sound pretty bad for it. All of these top matchups here. Lugia, Miraidon, Dragapult, Archaludon, Gardevoir. I don't know if I really want to hit any of those as Palkpagos right now. So I'm going to put it low C tier because I do think that like it's a consistent aggressive deck. And I mean, I didn't really believe it in last format either, and it still managed to do really well towards the end of the seasons or the end of the format. So, I kind of have a little, like, even though I don't really like that deck, I have a little bit more respect for it than I should, maybe. But I want to put it at the top of C tier here. So, I wouldn't play it. I would recommend against it, but not worse than Charizard, Iron Thorns. Pidge Control, bottom of A tier, top of B tier. I probably wouldn't recommend it. I think that it's a little bit too slow. You really want to be winning. I think that like the deck is definitely still good, but the matchups are too close. Like it's going to be really tough for you to win your games 2-0 because a lot of your matchups are like 60-40, which means like your opponent has a pretty good chance of taking one of the first 2 games off of you, and then you probably won't have time for a game 3 in a lot of instances. So that's sort of a problem to playing the deck to a major to me. I think if you were playing like best of 1 majors, that Pitch Control would probably be good. You just close out 1 game, that's it, over, get your 3 match points. But currently, I think that Pitch Control is not an ideal choice for major events right now. And I think that like Badoo, you have the deck list that you have to play is like definitely less consistent than it was last format because you have to play answers to Badoo. Your Gardevoir and Dragapult matchups are pretty close. Definitely like favored, but they're not easy. Your Archaludon matchups not easy. Your Miraidon matchups not easy. They should be, but like you just don't set up as well as you once did, and they are so aggressive that sometimes you just get blown out of the water, just because you don't find the right pieces quick enough. But I like Pitch Control still. I think, like I said, if it was best of one, I think you'd have enough time to like consistently, just win your games. But if you have to win 2 games in 2 out of 3, I don't like your odds as much. Raging Bolt, C tier below Charizard. I think you have a bad Gardevoir matchup. I don't think your Dragapult matchup's good anymore. Your Miraidon matchup's like favored, but not by that much because they can still just like high roll you. Our Archaludon matchup's pretty good. Actually, your Archaludon matchup's not good. What am I talking about? They can set up like a 1 prize board against you if they have a decent opening, and then just like boss for 2 prizes every turn after that, after you take 1 prize. So yeah. Scratch that. Archaludon matchup is not good. A Pultzard matchup. Pultzard isn't on here, but I put it like middle of B tier ish. But we just have the Pult Duskmore build up here in A tier. But that's a pretty bad matchup for Raging Bolt as well. Lost Box isn't a good matchup. Lugia is not a good matchup. So Raging Bolt, bad as always, to be honest. Klawf, top of A tier. People who follow me and my content probably know that I like this deck right now. I do have a guide on this deck as well, and the exact list that I would be playing to EUIC. And honestly, this is a deck that I'd most likely be playing to EUIC, because I don't typically like to play decks that I've already day 2'd with again. I will. It's not a strict rule, but if I'm like not sure if I want to play, Snorlax or Klawf, I'm probably just gonna play Klawf because I've never played it before. I like to have more fun playing decks that I haven't before. So yeah, for me, EUIC would be a Klawf angle. I think that you don't really have any serious bad matchups. I think that most of the decks that you lose to, like Zard and Pultzard, Ancient Box, are not really real decks that I actually respect in this metagame. So I'm totally fine with taking those bad matchups. I think that you have even matchups into like Gardevoir and Dragapult, and then you have like favorable matchups into like most like a good chunk of the rest of the field. You have so many ways to win the game. You take a lot of free game 1 wins. And I think the deck is just really, really strong right now. I think it's super aggressive, super consistent. I mean, people put too much value in the donk, but even it just like taking a single prize is really good. Any deck that can like just turn 1, just like consistently going first, whip out a full bench of 8 Pokemon, it cannot be bad. You know what I mean? Like this deck is like crazy consistent. Regidrago will go at the... Putting too many decks in B tier. Do I think Drago is worse than all of these decks? I don't. We'll put Drago below Gholdengo. That feels wrong. I think this is a fine spot for it though. Drago is like pretty... It's definitely better position than it has been. I think the Miraidon matchup's fine. Gardevoir isn't really playing Badoo most of the time, or Metafy, so like that matchup's pretty good for Drago right now. Dragapult I still think is tricky, and I do think that Gardevoir list with Badoo are still tricky. Your Archaludon matchup is pretty close. Your Lugia matchup is definitely not good. But I think that like the deck still is just like too weak to Badoo in general. I think that like it's just lost a lot of weight. I think that your Miraidon matchup's not that good. Your Archaludon matchup's not that good. Like they're fine, but Drago doesn't like the only deck that Drago really beats right now consistently is Guardy, and that's just not like that's good, but it's not enough. I don't even think I think that like Pult and Miraidon would probably be the top 2 decks. Like Guardy could still be the like one of the top 2 with Dragapult, but Miraidon, I mean if not 2, it'll definitely be 3. I think Pult, Guardy, and Miraidon are almost definitely going to be the top 3 either way. But I think the Miraidon might overtake Guardy. So like having a good Guardy matchup is nice and all, but it's really not enough to make Drago viable again. You don't even beat all Guardy lists, only ones that are not playing specific techs. Roaring Moon EX. I'm going to put this in C tier. I honestly might have put this higher if I didn't see a post today on Twitter where someone said that people shouldn't be putting in the bottom tier without testing it. And then I thought about it, and I was just like looking at this tier list. I mean, even looking at this tier list now, and I'm just like, what decks does Roaring Moon even beat? Like, it's favored into Snorlax, and sure, maybe it has some even matchups here, but it really isn't favored into any of these other decks. Like, it's bad into Guardy, bad into Klawf. Archaludon's got to be a mediocre matchup. I think, like, me might be favored into that, but I'd say it's got to be, like, pretty close. Especially because they have Black Belt, so they can one-shot a Roaring Moon, and they're starting with a single prize board always, which you are not. And you're pretty reliant on things that Archaludon can one-shot. So none of these, like, Dragapult's not a good matchup. Miraidon is, like, 50-50, because it's just a coin flip. Whoever goes second is strictly favored. Pitch Control, maybe, but nobody's really playing Pitch Control. Lose to Lugia, lose to Lost Box, lose to Walls if they play Noivern Mist. Or multiple Mimikyu Mists, probably decent into it as well. Gholdengo is not a good matchup. Drago is like, I don't even think Drago is a good matchup. Ancient Box bad, Ceruledge is bad. Like, I'm just like, I don't know, what is, like, Roaring Moon just doesn't beat anything. I can't imagine, like, why, like, if you really like Roaring Moon and just, like, always play it, I can see that being a reason that you're playing it to UAC, but, like, I can't see, like, if you're like doing like meta-analysis and that's how you're choosing your deck, how you ever like come to the conclusion that Roaring Moon is the move, you know? So I think I have to put it in the bottom tier here. I just don't see like it beating anything on this tier list other than Snorlax. Terapagos Dusknoir. I will put that at top of C tier. I think its Guardian matchup is bad and its Dragapult matchup is bad. Its Miraidon matchup is not great either. Archaludon matchup's not that good either, so it just loses to a lot of the top decks. I think like it's still a good deck, but Badoo is kind of annoying for it, and it loses to most of the decks at the top of the metagame. So that's too much for me to ever put it above C tier. Like all the decks in the B tier, like at least have decent matchups into one or two of the top decks. Gouging Fire EX, below Lost Box, above Walls. Gouging Fire is, like, really good into Gardevoir and Dragapult, I think. I also think your Miraidon matchup's not that bad, but, I mean, it's coin flip. Your Archaludon matchup can be a little bit sketchy, I think, but it's relatively fine. Yeah, so I think that, like, Gouging Fire, it's a little bit inconsistent still, in my opinion. Like, I've tried the second place list a lot, and I liked it. I definitely underrated it up to this point, but it's still like a relatively inconsistent deck, and it beats some of the top decks, but it does have struggles elsewhere, like against Lugia and Lost Box can be tricky for it. So I'm still not a big fan of Gouging Fire. However, I definitely have more respect for it than I once did, and I would happily put it in B tier here. And I think that's it. We have some more decks down here, but none of these decks are real. They just were on the template for this tier list. Anyways, I'm not going to rate them. I guess if I were to rate them, I'd probably be putting them all in the bottom tier here, because I don't think they are real decks that people should really be playing. I mean, Lost Box, Radiance, Argentina are like probably not, and Conkeldurr. Like, these three decks here are not as bad as the other 6 decks there, but none of them are decks that you should be playing to the international championships. So that's all of my thoughts. I think, for me, it would be one of these 4, Snorlax, Gardevoir, Klawf, Archaludon. Obviously, I don't have to lock in a choice because I am not there, but if I did, if I had a major event tomorrow, like all of a sudden, like I didn't have more time to like prep for it, I'd probably play Klawf. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. And I hope everyone has a good time either playing in or spectating the European International Championships this weekend.